of cybersecurity. Here are your hosts Brian Horning, Reginald Andre, Randy Bryan, and Ryan O'Hara.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian, with Reg Andre and Randy Bryan. What's up, guys? How are you?
Hey, doing well.
Doing great. How about yourself?
Happy Monday.
We're on a AK short week because I have to travel later in the week, and this is Monday. We usually record on Tuesday, so we only have 6 days worth of content to update you on from the last time we recorded. But as you guys know, before we jump into MSI, the Taiwanese chip maker getting ransomware, a New Jersey police department in my backyard getting hit with ransomware, and then just a lot of updates on a lot of fallouts from a lot of ransomware events that we want to educate you about so you understand the full ramifications of what happens when you don't do cybersecurity the right way. That's the point of the show. So if we, enlighten you, if we educate you, if we made you think, if we shared a new perspective with you that you didn't know before you listened to this show, please share the show, rate the show, get the word out. We're on social media. We're on your favorite podcasting platforms. And I think that's where you find us. So just share us out wherever you find us, wherever you hear us, or at least give us a rating. Any of those things helps us out tremendously with other people seeing our content. And the more people that see our content, the better off the world's going to be. Right, Randy? Right, Randy?
Yes.
All right. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, MSI, the big chip maker out of Taiwan, has been hit with ransomware. And as we always talk about on the show, when we start to see computer manufacturers get hit with ransomware, or chip makers get hit with ransomware, or software developers get hit with ransomware, it really elevates the concern for supply chain types of attacks down the road. And this is no different. And this is just a huge company. Like, I consider MSI second to only NVIDIA in terms of who makes the most chips in the world. And I don't think I'm too far off from that. And that's a wild guess, but that's how I think of this company. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. So here we go. They officially confirmed it was the victim of a cyber attack on its systems, and the company said it promptly initiated incident response and recovery measures after detecting network anomalies. It also said it alerted law enforcement agencies of the matter. And that said, MSI did not disclose any specifics about when the attack took place and if it entailed the exfiltration of any proprietary information, including source code. So not too much here in this particular article, guys. As we scroll down, it goes in to say that currently the affected systems have gradually resumed normal operations with no significant impact on financial business, the company said in a brief notice shared on Friday. So what are your guys' thoughts on this? Do you guys think that this is does it sound like this is something that they caught? Like they said when they detected network anomalies, but it sounds to me like the network anomaly was you have ransomware.
We don't know the details yet. But there currently is a group on the dark web that's claiming responsibility for this.
Right.
They claim that they've stolen 1.5 terabytes of data.
Yikes.
Including BIOS source code, which is kind of the guts of the brain of the computer, and then also keys to allow signing, to allow people to basically upload BIOSes to motherboards using these keys to get them installed. If that's true, this is devastating. Whenever you hear to people that are listening, whenever you hear us talk about source code getting breached, that's devastating. When keys that allow you to basically get the keys to the kingdom to install stuff, that's bad. This hasn't been verified, so this could just be somebody just trying to make a name for themselves saying that they stole it. But if this is true, this could be really bad.
Yeah, in another article, they said that the ransomware is about $4 million is what they're asking for. So, but I think it's important too, where whenever you do need to get any updates from your computers, why it's so important that you're not Googling like the manufacturer name, or you're going straight to that website, because now if they do have any information that can make it website information, models, all of this information, they can now basically try to replicate MSI's website, and the unknowing will think it's their website, download something that's malicious, and now infect those computers as well.
Yeah, it's if you guys remember when Acer was attacked, things came out slowly around those attacks as well. They were attacked multiple times, and I'm just referring to the most recent one. And over time, more data and more information has been released, and people really started to understand over a period of I would say almost over a year. You really started to understand the breadth and depth of what they were able to get from Acer. And I would suspect that you're not going to find much different here in this case with MSI. I think you're going to find out that they ended up getting a lot of stuff, and a lot of things are going to be released over a long period of time. They will continue to, in my opinion, try to extort them for as long as they can. And they'll continue to release information and try to extort them around the fact that we have this information and we're going to continue to release it. And they don't want this information getting out there. As Randy said, the source code, they don't really want this information getting out there because, a lot of things can be done with that, among supply chain attacks. You can also just steal the information. It's proprietary information that makes very expensive and very profitable chips for computers. And, if somebody else could get their hands on that and replicate those chips, that's damage to this company. So lots at play here, and we're in the early stages, as it was mentioned, and we'll find out more as this moves along. So anything else you guys want to add to this? Pretty scary, because this is just the beginning, as we've kind of noted with a lot of these attacks lately, that unfortunately this is just the beginning of what we're going to see be a long drawn out situation for MSI.
Yeah, this could be, if you own an MSI computer, this is going to put you at risk. Be super careful where, like Andre said, where you're downloading your BIOS updates from. Don't do it from third-party websites. Be very careful.
And don't and scrutinize every email that you get that might alert you to download some kind of update or something like that, because a lot of these cards, especially graphics cards, I know a lot of times you have to register them to get the warranty. So it's a pretty common practice for people to, gamers and, even crypto miners, back when they used to use cards for mining cryptocurrency. These were all registered by people. And if they have that data now, they could potentially phish you and try to, say, hey, MSI put a major update out, and really scrutinize those emails, who they were sent by, where they came from, hover over the links, and as best practice, always just type in the URL to the site yourself and click through the links and get to the support pages, and just do it all manually. Don't be lazy. Don't rely on convenience and click on links and search for things on Google, because you could end up in a bad place because of this type of an attack, because scammers and cyber criminals are all over this, creating fake pages, fake emails, all that stuff. So be alert. All right. So my backyard, guys, we had an incident with the Camden County Police Department. Camden County is one of the largest more populated southern New Jersey counties. It's across from Philadelphia. It is home to the city of Camden as well. And that is one of the largest cities in the state of New Jersey. Unfortunately, their police department experienced a ransomware attack that has been locking many criminal investigative files and day-to-day internal administration abilities, several law enforcement officials said. Investigators said that the attack started in the middle of March, and technicians continue working to try to get all systems back up and running. A police spokesman confirmed the cyber intrusion, but stressed the ransomware attack did not impact 911 call systems or public safety responses. The Camden County Police Department spokesman Dan Keeshan said that the malware first hit the department about 3 weeks ago, and the agency is operational and did not experience any disruption or outages in its public safety response services to the Camden City community. The FBI, the New Jersey State Homeland Security's office, and the New Jersey Attorney General's office were all notified of the incident and are assisting in the investigation. I'm just trying to skip ahead here and read, but what are your guys' thoughts on this? I mean, county right in our backyard, hit with ransomware, pretty brazen to hit a law enforcement because the FBI is getting involved in that. As a cyber criminal, you got to be thinking a few steps ahead and realize that if we hit these guys with ransomware, we're going to have the heat on us.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Andre.
No, I'm always looking at other articles as well, and in another article, it talked about how the prosecutor's office also was hit with ransomware earlier in March as well. So it looks like it's something that they're sharing or something that is definitely targeted.
Yeah, so it really looks here. I would guess it's early on. We don't know a whole lot. I would guess, Brian, that they're going to use this or try to use the data that they have. Obviously, they'll use it for extortion. Either A, the systems are locked, here's money to unlock it, or B, we have your data, this is a kidnapping, and here's the ransom you need to pay, or else we're going to release your data to the wild. This would be really, really bad if this was released to the wild, because it's going to be most likely you'll have police officers that are involved in crimes, people's criminal records get released. I mean, there's really no telling. Maybe their internal processes might get revealed, internal emails. There's really no way of knowing, but this has the potential to be extremely devastating.
Yeah. Article goes on to state that sources briefed on the matter said the electronic police files were among those locked and inaccessible, which means that police are probably doing reports by paper and no longer on their computers, which has got to be, grueling. They continued to go on to say that the department is working with the information technology and law enforcement professionals to ensure there's no remaining threat on our network. And then one law enforcement source said investigators were looking into whether the incident began after a police department employee opened a personal email that was malware on a police department device. Interesting.
Yeah,
we don't usually get these leaks today, and it's funny to me that their own law enforcement source, whoever that is leaking this information that somebody opened something up on a personal email, and we could only go to speculate what that is. I mean, my mind, I don't know what you guys think about this, but my mind goes to that CEO or that person who has a lot of authority in an organization, who demands that they be allowed to, kind of skirt the rules that are laid out for everyone else in order to protect data, and kind of demand that they get their Gmail or their personal email set up on their device along with their work email. That's kind of what I think of when I read things like that, is that, this got leaked because somebody who knew that wasn't right knew it was going on. And because that was going on, now they have ransomware.
You know where my mind goes?
Go ahead.
My mind goes to the one from Oakland where the union's now suing the city for the leak. And it makes me think, well, the reason they leaked this information, that it was an officer who clicked on a personal link, maybe they're trying to cover their rears to keep their union from suing them if the data ever gets leaked. I don't know. I'm thinking of cat and mouse chess game stuff here.
Well, I mean, since you're talking about Oakland real quick, I'll just kind of share this with you because we moved it down in the list on our green room kind of agenda. But as you mentioned, Oakland just acknowledged again last week that their ransomware attack has worsened with more new information being released. So you mentioned it. I thought I'd bring it up because we're going to talk about it later. But that's the deal. I mean, this is just going to get worse and worse for the city of Camden, unfortunately. But it just goes to show you. I mean, nobody is immune. Nobody should feel like they're above the standards that are set by, IT and cybersecurity professionals and, the decision makers of an organization. If you guys decide that there's a certain standard to uphold and all employees need to follow this, you can't make exceptions because, somebody who has the authority or somebody who's higher up wants something. I mean, I've been personally witnessed situations or been involved in situations where, a subordinate is being told do this by somebody higher up. And who are they to say no? They're not going to say no. They're just an IT person working in the IT department. There's some, 20-some-year-old kid who's being told, set this email up on my phone. Do you think they're going to fight back or say no? I don't. I mean, and that's the situation that people need to be aware of that happens, that lead to events like this. Nobody's above the law, so to speak, when it comes to cybersecurity.
Right. I wonder also, like, could this be some criminal that's under investigation, that's a high profile criminal, and they hired a international
Well, we know that
get to go in and lock up the files? And I mean,
I don't think so. I just think this is going to be similar to what we saw with DC, where there's definitely going to be an element. I mean, look, probably the best city you could do this in is Camden. If you're talking about, wanting to out undercover police officers or extort,
right.
I mean, Camden is a high crime city. And if I were some politicians in and around Camden and Camden County, I'd be shaking in my boots a little bit, depending on what kind of information gets out. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure DC is in a similar situation as Camden. So, yeah, 100%. Take a page out of what happened in DC. They extorted people who were under investigation. They extorted police officers who were, quote unquote, undercover. They actually went and basically contacted two gangs. I remember there was a story where they contacted both sides of the gangs to kind of, try to get one side riled up so they could make money off of another. So this is all to come here in the city of Camden, which is, just so you guys know, like I said, this is in my backyard, so I know a little bit more. The city of Camden used to have their own police department, and it was so corrupt, it got shut down. And this, Camden County Police Department took over probably about a decade ago. And it's, for all intents and purposes, it seems to be doing better. But it's a county-funded police department that is running the city, that is basically responsible for the city of Camden. And yeah, this is going to impact not just the residents of the city of Camden, the whole entire county, which the taxes in that county are through the roof as it is, are going to have to pay for this.
Right. And I did get a comment on my Facebook. Someone is asking about, does this show how cities are basically underfunded or underfunding for, there we go, right there, for cybersecurity? I didn't know you could do that on your StreamYard. Way to go, Brian. But that's a good question. And we know statistically that that's probably true. We're seeing lots of cities that aren't really doing anything, or very little for cybersecurity. It's disturbing.
Yep.
It also just shows that, maybe the IT director for this city police department was doing everything right, but it just takes that one thing to be wrong, and everything else is just a downfall. And in this case, if it was that Gmail or whatever the personal email it was, that's all it takes. Bypass the spam filters that the city had, went right in, and boom.
Yep.
Yeah, and all it takes is that email click opening up a little executable that can do a instant search around the network for vulnerable
Gmail.
Yeah. So
Gmail's the best. Nothing gets through on Gmail. All right. So we have another question here before we move on. Cindy Phillips wants to know, and what will the cities need to cut to be able to fund new cybersecurity initiatives? Wow. And I'm not a politician here, Cindy, but I personally don't think there'll be no cuts. I think they're just going to go back to the well and pay for this using bonds and raising people's taxes.
Agreed.
But that's kind of how they're going to do it. They're not going to cut anything. And John Hansen.
There's also funding that's been made available. It's not much compared to all the other things that the government's been spending money on, but I believe they made $800 million available. I think it's becoming available this year. It was last year they made it available. Like I know in Texas, it won't be available until September, but that money is supposed to go towards cities and governments, local municipalities, things like that, to be able to have cybersecurity or to be able to better protect themselves. This is a national security issue, in my opinion.
100%. Oh, yeah. I mean, the FBI, I don't know what kind of resources they have at the end of the day, but I got to imagine they got to be getting stretched thin, helping, we talked about the city of Camden, right? They're helping there, or at least the county. And then they're just all over the place getting involved in ransomware attacks. Makes you wonder how much they can really help small businesses who get attacked or medium-sized businesses. I don't think they can. I think they have to pick and choose what they get involved with. And unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at. And, as we go through, we talked about Common Spirit a couple of weeks ago. And again, in line with what we talked about with Oakland, this Common Spirit issues an update confirming that 164 facilities were affected by a ransomware attack. And this was back in October of 2022. The Common Spirit had a ransomware attack, and now they've confirmed that 164 patient facilities were affected. That's a lot.
Ouch. Yeah. I think I would just hang it up, retire. That's it for me, man. Dealing with that.
And definitely confirmed that patient data was stolen. So as this stuff gets released, they're going to be up against it here in the next couple of months. And that's why we're kind of briefly touching on this and updating everybody. Because as this gets deeper and as the lawyers and the investigators are pulling through all the data and the logs to see what actually happened here, and depending on what they have available and what they don't have available, sometimes when you don't have telemetry available to figure out what's going on, you have to assume that it was. So it could be a little bit of that going on too. But you have a ton of facilities here that were impacted where patient data probably lived, and there's probably a lot of information that's been released, and there's going to be a lot of lawsuits to follow.
623,774 individuals is the estimate, the current estimate.
That was at their first time to actually come out and say the exact number. Could end up being more. That's crazy.
Yep. And they run hospital facilities, and it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 11 states. So,
and people don't realize how bad this data is when it's deleted, because there's several aspects here. One, if they find out if it includes personal health information, then that can be used to target individuals, building trust because they know some things like, hey, reaching out to you about your knee, blah, blah, blah. And boom, here's some things. We'll probably see, I have no doubt, if it's not already there, very, very soon, somebody's going to figure out how to use ChatGPT to take all of the dark web data that's coming from different places and use it to bring it all together, to build profiles on people. It can also be used, this information, literally today, my blood's still boiling because today, and I didn't say anything to anybody. Y'all the first person I've said this to. I said something to my wife earlier on the phone with a financial institution. They asked for a social security number, a date of birth, and an address. And boom, I was verified. I was verified in their system after that. And I wanted to blow a gasket because that stuff's out there for so many people now these days. Someone could just get that information, call this company, and start getting into the financial accounts and doing things with that. So when stuff like this gets leaked, it's more than just it affects one person. This is opening up the door to so much.
Yeah, it is 100%. So, I mean, you're talking over 500,000 people already, and this is the early stages of disclosure, and they're fully expecting this to go up. And this isn't the end of this. This is just an update to probably many more that we're going to bring you over the next couple months. So, moving right along, guys, we have another article that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to talk about it briefly. Is these Iranian-based hackers are basically using ransomware as a false flag for what's being dubbed as the destruction of systems. So really the end goal here and the reason we don't have much information on as to why this group known as Muddy Water has been doing this way. There has to be a reason. And I would imagine that they're probably targeting very specific targets where making systems inoperable makes a lot of sense versus deploying ransomware and trying to make money off of it. So I'm thinking this is more of in lines with geopolitical motives behind it. And they probably are trying to target critical infrastructure type of systems would be my guess, if based on what I'm reading here. But at the end of the day, they've been observed breaking into facilities, networks, and making it look like they're getting ready to deploy ransomware. But that's just a false flag, like I mentioned, to literally just destroy the system, delete it, and completely destroy and disrupt the whole entire operation. That's what's at play here. Thoughts on this, guys? This is a new twist that, do you think I'm correct in saying that, maybe normal private businesses don't have to worry about this threat, or do you think I'm off on that? Because I feel like this would be more of a target of like the grid and things like that.
I mean, I guess it just depends on their intentions. I mean, Iran is involved in a lot of stuff geopolitically, and they are in a constant state of war with certain countries. So, from that standpoint, just keeping it from that standpoint, if they got into Joe's plumber shop in Camden, New Jersey, they might go ahead and if you're Joe's plumber shop, that was just a made up example, but they might get into that plumber shop and wipe the systems just because that happens to be somebody that's contributing to the economy of the United States of America. But on the other hand, they do have very sophisticated cyber criminality. Wow, I can't even say that word, but they are very sophisticated from this particular in this particular aspect. And they could be going after targeted individuals, targeted companies, targeted governments. I mean, they could be doing all of that. So I think it's a valid point. what are they going to do if they find collateral? You know, are they going to do collateral damage as well if they run into other systems along the way? I bet you they will. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
One thing I am noticing more as we go through more articles is the fact that Microsoft is getting more involved, and you're hearing that they're being proactive. And there's an article we're going to talk about that, but just more and more, I'm just starting to see Microsoft, you know, giving the community more information and what they're doing about it, and not just saying, you know, hey, we're selling this and it's up to you to protect it, but they're actually helping the greater community as well.
And it does say down in the article that they've primarily singled out Middle Eastern nations, which is, you know, going to be top of their list as well. Certain nations are you know, they're at war, or internally they view them as enemies. And so that makes sense as well.
Yeah. So good point. This is an interesting one, guys, that we're going to bring up next is this Rorschach ransomware. And I don't know if you guys check this out, but the reason that they're kind of making news here is, and the reason that they're named Rorschach is because they actually, things kind of change every time they run it. Like, and this group has been around for a little under a year. They first hit the scene in June of 2022. And there's a couple things with this group. But the main thing is that their ransom demands typically tend to be on the lower side for the types of groups that they hit. So I think the most that they've ever asked is $1 million is the highest. And it seems to be that, you know, somewhere between 50,000 to $1 million is where their kind of sweet spot is for ransom demands, which is considered to be on the low side. Now, I read this article, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is because this is kind of a play for me, like where they're just evaluating the marketplace and how the insurance companies are responding to this. And they're pivoting, knowing that if they ask for lower amounts, that they're not going to trigger as much of an issue around getting paid as if they were asking for higher amounts. So I think these lower amounts are palatable from both the business standpoint and the insurance company standpoint. So they're seeing a higher rate of payment versus if you come in at like $4 million and they're like, there's no way we're paying that. We're just going to recover from a backup. They've kind of found a sweet spot, like I said, where their victims are going to pay this amount, and they'll just, you know, economies of scale, they'll just hit more companies to kind of, you know, hit their revenue benchmarks. Instead of only needing to hit one a month, you can hit, you know, 5 a week. And yes, you're dealing with more people on the back end, but a lot of this stuff's getting automated by software. So you don't need as many people. So now you can hit more companies and ask for less money. Is that what you're seeing based on this article? Because that's kind of how I interpreted it.
Yeah, absolutely. Pay it. Don't get the insurance company involved. You know, sweep it under the table and let's move on as fast as possible.
Right. If you know somebody's deductible, like we're just going to ask for this amount, you're not even going to hit your deductible. So don't even file for cyber insurance. Right. So then you're not dealing with an attorney and somebody who's hired by the insurance company to negotiate this ransom. You're avoiding all that bullshit, which I'm sure they hate dealing with. And that's, you know, where this is going.
Also, the article mentions that they really try to push it for speed, and it really takes advantage of kind of a known flaw, you know, on the defense side of cybersecurity, and that's companies will put out like a fake Word document, and then they watch for it to be encrypted. And then when it's encrypted, usually involves a human getting involved, and then someone deciding, hey, this whole machine's getting encrypted. Let's separate it from the network. And one of the things that this ransomware does is it kind of cuts the time almost in half of what like Lockbit and Conti and some of those other ones actually how long they actually take to encrypt.
Right.
So with that speed, they can basically fly under the radar, because if they can do it in 5 minutes, there's almost no way that a security operations human is going to see that, reach out to the business owner, and get it separated from the network. By then, they'll still just be asking questions. So
yeah.
And I did read that the name, real quick, the name comes from the
Rorschach,
Rorschach was a doctor
Yep.
who created those ink blot things. And everybody who's looked at this ransomware has come up with like a different thing about it that caught their eye. So that's why they named it that.
Yeah.
But I think in the long term, though, this is going to be bad if it is just paid, because it didn't hit the deductible. Because I think the environment changes when you are getting all of those. You're getting the attorney involved, breach coach involved, cybersecurity remediation companies involved. I think the culture of the whole company normally then changes, because it was like a oh crap moment and all the lessons learned. But if you just pay 50 grand under the table, nobody knows. It's like, what are you doing to make your things better? Are you just kind of like expensing it off and just calling it a day and like, all right, we dodged a bullet,
Yep.
let's continue? Or
Yep.
So I think that's kind of bad as well.
So Andre, great segue. 1/3 of U.S. companies cover up cyber breaches and ransomware.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
It's in this article, it says nearly half, 42% of IT professionals have been told to hush up data breaches and ransomware attacks, according to a survey by Bitdefender. More shockingly, 29.9% of respondents admitted to keeping a breach confidential instead of reporting it. And I think that those numbers are severely low. Like, I'm dead serious. I would say double those numbers all day long, and you're still in the safe category. So I'd say probably close to 90% have been told to hush up, and I would say close to 60% admit to keeping a breach confidential. I'd say double those easily. Those are lying statistics all day long. I caught a fish this big. No, it was this
Well,
big.
if you hold it up to the camera, it looks even bigger. See, this big fish, you hold up the camera, it looks like it's a foot wide.
That's how I take my selfies with my fish. Like, I hold my arm.
But I would say that I don't know that the reasons behind this are necessarily nefarious. It always goes back to everybody just wants to get their work done. And, you've not always, but a lot of times it does. So a lot of times people will bring in what we call shadow IT. They'll bring in other apps and other devices because they're just trying to get their work done. Doesn't make it right. And I wonder in these cases if business owners, IT people are just wanting to get back to work rather than having to deal with a really long investigation and, shutting their systems down. We know that like 80% of all businesses go out of business within like 6 months after a ransomware event. So a lot of businesses are just hanging on by a thread as far as money goes. And the thought of having to go through like a 3-week or a 6-month long investigation into this stuff is probably pretty scary. So that'd be my thoughts on that. I think you're probably right. It's probably way underestimated. People just want to get back to work a lot of times.
So quickly blowing through this statistics in this article, which is really well done by Insider Intelligence. Why are businesses hiding security breaches? Organizations are burying data breaches to avoid legal and financial penalties or to skirt liability for compromising their users' data. And I think that's only going to increase with things like FTC safeguards, guys. Because FTC safeguards isn't even a thing yet, right? But then you have people skirting things because of the FTC, as you can see in the next line, where the research comes less than a year after the FTC convicted former Uber CISO Joseph Sullivan for attempting to cover up a hack of Uber in 2016. So like, it doesn't matter when you covered up a cyber attack. Like, you had a cyber attack in the last 12 months and FTC safeguards goes into effect in June and they don't push it back again, and things come out and lawsuits are filed, they're going to use that to come after you. State attorney generals will absolutely use that to come after you. The problem, according to the annual data breach report by the Identity Theft Resource Center, is 41% of U.S. companies have been breached multiple times in the past 5 years. So that's not even one time. So I would say probably double that to 82% of U.S. companies have been breached in the last 5 years. And when you say in multiple times, it's 41%, which is wild. I'm just going to skip down to this last one where it says Rackspace laid off 275 employees last week, or 4% of its global workforce, due to an uncertain macro environment. But as we know, it is not, but this could, I will say it is with 100% certainty related to lawsuits from its massive ransomware breach in December.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You actually literally mentioned that from the previous article, Andre, about what you just said, Brian, about not wanting to affect the reputation, wanting to just move on. I don't know. I wonder, going back to that previous article, does this mean we're going to start seeing smaller ransoms? So people have to pay less and can just move on. Another disturbing thing out of this particular article, though, is the one that says 52% of organizations have experienced a breach within the past 12 months. That's over half.
And what happens when, you pay that ransom $50,000 or whatever it is, and then 6 months later, you find out that the bad guy also made a deal with somebody else and now selling your information on the dark web. And now you're having to explain to your shareholders or to your customers or to your vendors that something happened last year and you did not say.
So one of the things I want to point out is a chart that I have up on the screen here. And basically it's the cyber readiness levels of U.S. companies. So if you're sitting there and you hear about all these cyber attacks and you're wondering why they happen, well, this is a really good visual representation of why they happen and the frequency that they happen. Because at the end of the day, every company should be striving to be in that dark gray area, which is known as mature, or an index score of 76 plus, which, quite frankly, that's a pretty liberal score if you want to consider yourself mature. Progressive is a 45 to 75, right? So if we just look at the companies that are actually mature in their cybersecurity practices, overall, that's the one you want to be looking at. That's everything evaluated. Only 13% of companies in the U.S. have reached a maturity level of where they're considered mature. Right. And then if you start to look at whether it's software, whether it's the network, whether nothing there goes even close to 50%. So you have more than half the companies in this country, even if you break it out by devices and data, they're not even halfway. We don't even have half the country at a level which I would consider mature, where they could fend off a cyber attack. That's how I look at this data. It's pretty scary.
It is.
There's a lot of opportunity for improvement for sure, but what are we doing there? And how are we doing it?
And internet's been out or around, how long?
What's that?
I said, how long has the internet been out where we're just using it and relying so much on it, but then it hasn't caught up to the security aspect.
Right. So we got Dish Network. Their lawsuits are piling up. I think we touched on that, but we're going to continue to update this. We're not going to spend a ton of time on this. We're kind of just showing everybody that Dish Network is now starting to deal with massive lawsuits because of their ransomware attack. Do you guys think this is the beginning of the end for Dish Network? I mean, because if I'm like DirecTV or somebody like that, you're just waiting to gobble this company up at this point. No.
Yeah, it's bad, because if they get too many lawsuits, if they have to do a class action lawsuit.
Oh, it's multiple class action lawsuits at this point.
And that has the potentially basically to end the company. You're right. So
at the end of the day, this is a company that provides satellite service to basically the whole. I don't even know if they operate internationally, but basically every state attorney general is going to file a class action lawsuit against Dish Network, all 50 states. So it's wild. I mean, because of the amount of data that was stolen. It wasn't about the TV service being down. That didn't happen. It's about the inability of these companies to protect consumer information. So, Randy or Andre, you mentioned this one a little bit earlier. Oh, there it is. This is interesting to me, and how Microsoft and well, actually three entities, this H. Isaac and then Microsoft and Fortra, decided to file a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for Eastern New York. And they basically agreed with Microsoft and Fortra, and they allowed them to basically remove illegal copies of Cobalt Strike so they can no longer be used by a ransomware as a service operation, such as Conti and Lockbit. So I'm not clear, and Andre, I don't know if you have read this as much, but I'm not clear on what do they mean by what exactly they mean by the remove illegal copies from where? From Microsoft systems or
no, because it seems that the hackers are using Cobalt Strike, which is like a penetration testing tool,
right?
But it's an illegal copy, so they're using that illegal copy now to then do bad things. So what they're wanting to essentially do is reverse engineer it and then stop that software, that service from actually running. Kind of like how they're trying to do with the
got it.
Right.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, so just like they're doing with the Microsoft Exchange servers.
Exactly.
So everybody remembers we talked about the Microsoft Exchange servers, how Microsoft took a pretty unprecedented step by basically saying, if you're running an old Exchange server, we're not going to accept mail from your server anymore after a certain date. And it sounds like they're about to do the same thing with Cobalt Strike. They're going to be able to determine because Cobalt Strike, just so everybody knows, is software, but you have to have a server that the software kind of reports back to. And I guess if that server is running an old version of Cobalt Strike, Microsoft is going to make an attempt to shut it down.
Well, it's not that it's
go ahead.
Well, it's not that it's an old version; it's a cracked version.
Yeah, unlicensed.
So somebody illegally obtained the keys for it, because Cobalt Strike's like $6,000 a year per person.
Sure.
And so they're
obtaining
the keys illegally, or they're maybe they're messing with the EXE or who knows what, to push some kind of fake key through there. But bottom line is they're able to tell from the internet, Fortra or Microsoft can tell, Fortra or Microsoft can tell if it's cracked. And they're just saying they're going to block those cracked versions.
Yeah.
Which seems like they'd want to do that anyway,
Right, but you can't just block traffic on the internet, because like they can do it at basically a layer 3 level, right? Where I mean, which I like the idea of them kind of blocking things at that level and not putting it on guys like us to have to do it, at our level. But at the end of the day, I hate this tool. I mean, I hate the fact how easy it is to get a trial version without them really knowing who you are or what you're using it for. And then clearly they don't really have a great mechanism for controlling who uses this software and being able to disable some of the features if you don't pay for it and if you don't register it. There's a lot of problems with this very powerful piece of software. As I say all the time to people that I work with and I coach around cybersecurity, if you have Cobalt Strike on your network, you're dead. Like, you're done. Like, forget about it. Like, the amount of damage that thing can do once it's on your network isn't going to be anything anybody wants to deal with. So kudos to Microsoft for doing that. I think it's a huge win for the security community. Let's see how far it goes. Let's see how long it can last before they pivot and move and figure out other ways. I mean, Randy, when I was reading this, the very first thing I thought of is there's a lot of ways to hide these servers from being discovered. That's kind of like, it's not like email where they have to be exposed to operate. Right. I can close this off to say only, like, oh, I only want this IP address communicating with my Cobalt Strike server, and then Microsoft can't find it. Right.
Right.
Isn't that so? That was my first thought when I read that. I was like, yeah, great, but they're just going to pivot and move to basically hiding it so it's not exposed to the internet, so it can be found. So, all right, guys, that's about it. We covered everything. Great show. We're 50 minutes in, and I knew there was going to be a ton to talk about because it didn't take me but 5 minutes to create the outline before the show. I appreciate everybody's comments. We didn't have time to throw everybody's up there. This new feature that we have available to us in StreamYard allows Randy and Andre and I to kind of blast this out to all of our social media channels. So we're getting it out there to a lot more people. Before we wrap up, guys, I know you can see the comments as well. Is there anything in there that you guys want to throw up before we end the show?
I thought Cindy Phillips made a great comment when we were talking about the not Horseshack. What was it? Rorschach. Yeah. The green room, you called it Horseshack. Yeah. Blitzkrieg cyber attack, coming in super fast and getting that encryption done before anybody has a chance to react. And, that's the cat and mouse game is what that is, because now they've basically, or the chess game, if you will, they've basically moved the chess piece. So now we're going to have to bring AI into the mix because AI can act quicker. But literally in the last month had a user, they saw one of the little, they're called canaries, saw one of the little canary files and deleted it. And so a human reached out and said, hey, your canary file's been deleted. Do we need to shut the system off? So this will just make it have to go where AI gets involved. And so in somebody's case like that, their system's probably going to get cut off from the internet because they deleted a canary file. So
100%. Yep. Good point. Andre?
Just thanks for James for commenting. Made a good point about zero trust being an excellent way to design your security strategy. So only allow the applications that for sure you're using, and everything else is automatically blocked. That would help in a lot of these scenarios that we talked about today.
Yep. And don't put the boss's Gmail on his phone, even if he puts a gun to your head. Don't do it. Yeah. So, all right. We'll see everybody in the next episode next week. Please remember, share the show and review us, rate us. 5-star review is very much appreciated. And we'll see everybody next week. Take care.
Have a great week.